I started out planning to document my parenting journey every few weeks at least. And then I realized my last update was back in February. So yeah, plans change. So when I last checked in, I had C and R, and for a very brief time, for one night, I had another kid for emergency placement. And then in early March, R ran away. That was an interesting few weeks trying to sort all of that out, but he finally got found, and I told DCS that he really could not come back with me. I just did not have the means of dealing with that. I just didn't have the resources. I wasn't equipped to. So for a while, it was just me and C. And then in mid-April, he took the HiSET exam, and he passed. He passed on his first try. I'm really proud of him for that. And that was everything he needed to do. So then he left shortly after that, and he went back home. Around that time, I got a call from DCS about another kid, Jay, who had disrupted from a pre-adoptive placement, and they needed somewhere for him to go now. And I said yes, a little bit blindly, and he showed up on April 26th. And by early May, I realized this was not working out. I could not keep him long term, and DCS was going to need to find somewhere else for him to go. It was very difficult. He was a very challenging kid to have around for reasons I don't really want to go into right here. But it was a difficult time, and then he finally left on May 23rd, right before I started doing some travel for the summer. And here's the first way plans change. My experience with Jay rattled me pretty hard and had me questioning whether or not I wanted to keep doing this foster parenting thing. I mean, let's face it, foster parenting is hard. Here's something I wrote in my journal just a couple of days after he left. When you become a parent, you open up your home and entire life to another person, but in a way that says you will care for them and guide them into adulthood. When they are your birth children, you help guide and shape them as they grow. True, they may not turn out as expected or desired, but it's a co-evolution, and you build the bonds that support you through challenging times. When you foster a child, especially an older child, those bonds take time to develop. Yet you immediately drop into sharing your home and life with them. That means if there's little to connect on, those bonds don't have a good opportunity to grow. They can form, but you need something on which to build them. By 16 and 17, they're mostly too independent to use routine to do it, and if there isn't enough overlap of personality or interest, you may be sunk. After returning from a 2-week trip to Kentucky, I decided to only do emergency and respite care for a time, and to intentionally focus on being matched with a child that I might one day adopt. I got a couple of calls about placements, but I said no to them. I just wasn't ready. Then in mid-June, I get a call about a kid who's a good bit younger than the ones that I've usually taken. B was 8, soon to be 9, and he didn't come with the whole list of baggage that I'm used to hearing about when I get calls from DCS. I finally said I'd take him on an emergency basis, but that I couldn't take him longer term because in about a week I was leaving on another trip, this time to Alaska, and there was no way that I could take him with me. My intention was to take him for a few days, maybe up to the whole week, and then after that be like, DCS, your problem again, deal. And by the next morning, plans had changed again. I fell in love with the kid almost overnight. By the next morning, when DCS called me to ask how that first night had gone, I said he could stay long term. But Alaska, and he still can't go with me. But if they could help me figure out respite care, he could come back to me when I got back. Eventually, we did figure out respite care, and before long, B and I settled into a comfortable groove for the long haul. It looked like he would be with me at least into the start of the new school year, possibly longer. We really didn't know. He went with us on a family beach trip, and it became clear to me that he's part of the family. In fact, however long he'll be with me, he's part of my family. In the meantime, I started making inroads on a possible adoption scenario with a kid in Virginia. Initially, things were really promising, so DCS put my home on hold, which meant I wouldn't be able to take any other placements aside from emergency placements. In many ways, I loved that. It was great, because it let me really focus on B and what he needed. It let me avoid having to worry about disruptions that might come from somebody else coming along and doing all sorts of weird stuff in there. And honestly, it was nice just having one kid and being able to focus on one kid for a while. And so I got to thinking, yeah, this is the life. This is great. And if I do add another kid, I want to be able to do it intentionally, where we have time to get to know each other, make sure it's going to be actually a good match for all of us involved. But then plans changed again. We hit some snags with the kid in Virginia, and suddenly that entire possibility is in limbo. But my home is still on hold with DCS, which kind of turns out to be a nice thing. In mid-September, I get a call from DCS asking about emergency placement for two brothers, ages 12 and 15. And as they start reading off the background of these kids, it's setting off every alarm bell in my head. Plus, 3 kids? Well, they say, oh, it's only emergency placement, so one of them can sleep on the couch, that'll be fine. I did that once. It was kind of a nightmare. So I am really hesitant on this. So I finally tell him, maybe, let me think about it a bit, but you should consider other people in the meantime, because the earliest I could take them is like 8 o'clock tonight anyway. I don't hear anything back from him. Until 2 days later. And then I get a call back again and they say, hey, you remember those 2 kids we called you about the other day? Yeah? Well, the older one got sent to a facility, but we may need emergency placement for the weekend for the younger one. Do you think you can help us out? Hesitantly, I say yes. After all, it's only for a weekend. And guess what? Plans changed again. As I got to know T that night, I realized here's a kid whose rap sheet does not at all describe who this kid is. He's helpful, considerate, he has a great sense of humor. B loves him, and the two of them play together so well. And he says his grandmother is coming from California at the end of the month to get custody of him and his brother. All right, I say, what's an extra week? So I tell DCS on Monday he can stay a little bit longer. It'll be a little bit of an adjustment, especially with him being in school on the other side of town, but it's a breath of fresh air and we can do it, and I'm in a place in my life right now where I actually can handle doing that. Plus, like I said, it's only a week, right? The plans changed again. A few days later, he learned his grandmother would not be able to come get him, and he'd be in foster care for the foreseeable future. So now I had a decision to make. Do I tell DCS, well, he's got another week and then you've got to come get him because I've got this possible adoption placement with a kid in Virginia that's on long-term limbo? Or do I tell Virginia, you know what, it's just not working out, and instead say yes to letting T stay here a lot longer? I said yes to T. He's an excellent fit here, and it just makes sense. DCS was a little surprised, but one of the things I really like about working with DCS is that they trust me to know what works best for my family and my household. And if I say this is a good fit and this is working out well, they take me at my word. We had a bit of juggling to get him transferred to a new school, but we got that taken care of, and now the 3 of us are settling into a great new groove, and it's working out really well. So what comes next? I have no idea. Other than that B and T will be with me likely for the foreseeable future. Will that be a few months? A year? Permanently? I don't know. And I've given up on trying to figure it out for now at least, because I know that whatever we figure out, plans will probably change. A final note on the theme of change. Once we decided T would be sticking around indefinitely, he asked if he could rearrange the bedroom the 2 of them share. I said B would have to buy into it, since he was here first, but he did, and we moved things around. And you know what? I like the room a lot better this way. Maybe the lesson here is that sometimes being open to the changes life brings can really open you up to the most amazing blessings around. Saying yes to DCS on each of them probably ranks as 2 of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. Maybe that's material for another episode. Foster parenting as a practice of faith.